Today we are going to be breaking the chains of the giant corporate tech companies, whether that be Google Workspace, Microsoft 365. We're going to be self-hosting our very own cloud, specifically Nextcloud. Nextcloud is awesome. I've been using it for years now. In its simplest form, it's basically a replacement for something like Dropbox. You can store all your files there, view them, edit them, so on and so forth. But it has so many different tools and features that add to the functionality, such as collaborative document editing, whether that be Docs, PowerPoint, Excel. They have groupware stuff, so calendar, contacts, mail clients. They have Nextcloud Talk, which you can basically self-host your very own kind of Zoom. So you could use it for talking with Teams, video calls, conferencing, stuff like that. They have Deck, which I use quite a bit. It's basically like a Kanban project management board, and that integrates with their to-do. They have wiki stuff and just so much more. They have a whole app store with a ton of different things that you can add to it. The features that come with it are modular, so you can get rid of things that you don't want. Overall, it is an absolutely fantastic platform, and it's actually quite simple to set up, especially with their all-in-one instance. Which is what we're going to be doing in this video. We're going to be setting everything up, including setting up a proxy with it so we can use some pretty domain names with some SSL certifications. But before we get into all of that, we do need to thank the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant. Brilliant here is actually an app that I do find myself opening up quite a bit. I try to do it instead of like doom scrolling Instagram or whatever. There are a bunch of different courses in math, science, programming, logic, technology, so on and so forth. And it's kind of like gamified learning. You can see all the various courses or little lessons that you've gone through. It has a lot of actual like hands-on practice with the things that you're actually learning, helping you to refine your knowledge. I am diving into the kind of programming, computer sciencey stuff. So it goes into like first if-else statements, then it starts diving into Python, a bunch of stuff. It's helping me get just a little bit smarter every single day. Like I said, each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play around with various concepts, a method that has been proven to be 6 times more effective than just watching YouTube or lecture videos, helping you understand from the ground up. Engaging problems, competitive features, daily encouragement to keep you going. There's points, leaderboards, things like that. So if you want to try everything that Brilliant has to offer, you can for free for 30 days using my link down below, or go ahead and scan the QR code on screen now, in which you could get 20% off if you go with their annual plan. So go ahead and check it out today. Now, some prerequisites to getting all this set up. First, you're going to want some sort of machine with Docker usable on it. For me, I'm going with a Ubuntu VM. This is actually running on Proxmox, but this can be just like a base Linux machine, mini PC. You can set this up on like Unraid, TrueNAS, whatever. Since it's running Docker, a virtual machine is usually a pretty decent bet. Just so as long as you could spin up a Docker Compose file, life is going to be good. I prefer Ubuntu. You can use any Linux distribution you want. And of course, whenever you dive into something like this, it's always a good idea to go ahead and update your machine. Apt update, app upgrade, yes, go ahead and do that. And there we go. And like I said, you're going to want to install Docker. I already got Docker on this machine, but if you've never ran Docker before, I do recommend you check out my written guide on it. It goes over how to install it, how to use it, networking, mounts, storage, bunch of stuff. Check that out. A basic understanding of Docker is very, very helpful. Again, if you don't have Docker installed, you just run their little installation script. It does everything for you, and then you add your user to the Docker group, so then you can run it rootless. And that's where we are now. So next step is picking a working directory. Now you can do this in your home directory. You can do it wherever you want. This virtual machine is going to be a dedicated machine for Nextcloud, so I am just going to do everything in a new directory on the root system. I'm just going to call it Nextcloud, just like that. So now I can cd directly into Nextcloud, and here we are. You can see it's owned by root. I want to give myself permissions to use it. And to do that, I'm just going to go sudo chown recursively with my user ID, which is 1000 into the Nextcloud directory we just created. Hit enter. And now you can see I got some ownership there. If you're not sure of your user ID, just ID, and there you go. Now, another consideration, Nextcloud is obviously a kind of primarily a file storage and management platform. So you're going to need a good place to put the files. Now here I created a Nextcloud folder. If this machine had a lot of storage, that's fine. Chances are you might want to do this with a network share. I'm not going to set up a network share right now. I will have information in the documentation that I'll link down below on how to do that, whether that be Synology, Unraid, whatever your main storage solution is. For me, within this folder, I'm going to just make a directory and call it NC data. That's where we're going to be storing all of our Nextcloud data. And you'll see how that's configured once we jump into the actual compose file. Which, if I bring this over here, this is my home lab GitHub repository. We're going to go under cloud, and this right here, need to give it a little quick rename. Boop, bop, beep, boop. This compose YAML file is going to have what we need. So I'm just going to give this a copy, go back over here, and within our Nextcloud folder, I am going to nano a compose.yaml. And now we could drop in everything we just copied. And then here we're setting up two services. We're setting up both the NGINX proxy manager for the domain names and the all-in-one master container. If you already have an NGINX proxy manager set up, if you followed my dedicated video on that, you could just completely remove everything from right here, basically everything in between these two comments. But I want to show you the whole process, so I'm just going to leave this in for now. And then we have the Nextcloud all-in-one master container. This actually is kind of a manager for a bunch of different containers, different Docker containers that all kind of work together to make the full kind of Nextcloud suite. That's why here under volumes, for example, has access to like the Docker sock. And I will also note, if I go over to the Nextcloud all-in-one GitHub repository and we go to their compose YAML, I do recommend you check this out, even if you just copy and paste mine, because here they'll have all the different environmental variables that you could use depending on your setup and how you're doing everything. You might want to add these, change some settings, and with specific things such as like Nextcloud memory limit right here, all of these variables do have little links to documentation explaining what they are and how to configure them. Very, very helpful. This will be linked down below. But for my setup, this seems to be everything that I need to configure to have at least the best experience for me. Now, back up to the NGINX proxy manager. This is set up using the network mode host, which just makes everything a whole of a lot easier when setting up both the local Docker containers with the proxy and external containers or external services on other machines. IPv6 disabled to true. If you do use v6, you can completely get rid of this line or just change it to false. And here under volumes, under this current working directory, so in our Nextcloud folder, it's going to create another folder called npm, and it's going to store the data and let's encrypt stuff for our proxy manager. And then here under Nextcloud, you're really not going to want to change too many things unless if it's under the environmental variables. We have network mode bridge. We have the volume for the configuration, which you're not going to want to change. We have that Docker sock I talked about, and we have the port 8080 open. If I jump back over to their official documentation, you can see there's some additional ports opened, but we're not going to be needing them since we're actually going to set up a proper domain with it, which I highly recommend. So just the port 8080 for the all-in-one kind of management interface is going to be perfect. And then here I have a couple different environmental variables. I've added the community containers. This is completely optional. It's like unofficial additions for Nextcloud that I just want to go ahead and test around and play around with. For example, I have local AI and memories here, which memories replaces the Nextcloud photo management solution. So I'm not going to dive into that, but I do want to, well, I'm not going to dive into it right now, but I do want to test it and dive into it in a future video. And of course, there's a link to the GitHub right here for the documentation on that. Apache port, probably one of the more important things here. This is the port that we're going to forward for our actual proxy. NC trusted proxies, it's commented out. If you have any issues at all, you might need to enable this. For example, if you have it running on a separate machine or the domain's not authenticating properly, you may need to add this and put in the local IP address for wherever your proxy is running on. Full text search Java options. When you search in Nextcloud, you can type in a phrase and it will search within documents for that phrase. And depending on how it's running, you may need to up this if it's kind of sluggish. And then very important is the Nextcloud data directory. If you set up a network share and you want it managed on that, you're going to want to change this line. Or if you're not following exactly what I'm doing with Nextcloud and NC data, you're going to want to change the location that the data is going to be saved in. Mount, I'm not using this right now, but if you want the container to see additional locations on your system, that's where you go ahead and do that. And then we have some general settings, upload limit, max upload time, Nextcloud memory limit, which I do double. We have DRI, so this is Intel QuickSync, so access to hardware transcoding for various services. Skip domain validation, we currently have set to false. And then right here we have our talk port. And then finally volumes, which you're also not going to want to change. And for me personally, how all this is it should be just simply ready to go. So I'm going to output this, close it out, and then we're going to spin it up. So if I go docker compose up -d, it is going to spin up all those services. So hit enter. You can see it's pulling the proxy manager and the master container. And there we go. They created. They're all started up. No significant errors, which is nice. Now, to remind ourselves of the IP we're currently on, or for this local machine, we could see we are on 210. So the very first thing, I just want to go ahead and get my Nextcloud passphrase. So if I paste in this IP address, and then I head over to the port 8080, hit enter. Here it's our server, so we're going to go advanced and then accept the risk and continue. And here it is. This is our passphrase, so you're going to want to save this. And if you do ever use it, there is a way to get into it or to get it by executing into the Docker container, but I'll go ahead and put that in the documentation. So with that copied, we're going to open all-in-one, paste it in, and log in. So here we are, it's up, it's working so far, life is good. But what we're going to want to do is head over to our proxy. And to get to that, we're going to go to the port 81, and this is just going to be HTTP. So hit enter, and here we are. The default login credentials for this is going to be admin@example.com with the password being change me. So we're going to sign in, and then it's going to prompt us to create our very first user. So we're going to go Brandon, click save, and we're almost good to go. Change me. So there we go. We've changed our stuff. So now we are going to actually set up our domain name. Now for this, I am going to be using a local top level domain name. You could always make it public later, but for this, I've actually purchased a domain name. There are free options that you could go ahead and use, but I purchased the domain hopkey.net specifically for local stuff only. And I have the domain being managed on Cloudflare, just to show you the services that will work if I just go to add SSL, use challenge. For the DNS provider, there's a whole bunch of options, including like DuckDNS is a popular one. We have GoDaddy, Google, just a whole bunch. So you can kind of go through there and figure out what's going to work. But again, I have mine hosted on Cloudflare. And here is that hopkey.net domain on Cloudflare. And if I go over to DNS, I've already changed this. But what you're going to want to do is set the IA record for the domain to the IP of your local machine that's running NGINX Proxy Manager. So when it queries the domain, it's going to spit back your local IP address for that, and locally in your network, it's going to work perfectly fine. Additionally, add a new record for CNAME with a asterisk. This is a wildcard, so we could set up subdomains and then set that to the actual domain name. And do not set up proxies for local top level domains. I go into this way more detail in a separate video, but this is the basics of it. So let's go ahead and just test this with our proxy server here. So if I go add proxy host, this is going to be our proxy.hopkey.net. Add that, and this is going to be on our local IP address. I'm pretty sure that you could use like the Docker container names for this, but I just like to do it this way. We'll go port 81, that's what we're currently on, enable WebSocket, block common, and then if I hit save, there it is. So now if I click on it, boom, you can see we are able to access this through our proxy. So the once you're able to do this, that means the domains have propagated properly. If this doesn't work yet and you just set up like Cloudflare or whatever happen you be using, it might take it a little while to work. But problem, you can see it's not secure. The connection is not secure. If I click on this, it's not secure. All kinds of warnings. Let's fix it. So to fix it, we're going to go over to Cloudflare or whatever service you use and get an API key. In Cloudflare, we go to our profile, API tokens. I'm going to create a new token, one for edit zone DNS. Here under zone resources, I just do all zones, continue to summary, create token. There it is. Give it a copy. And then back over here, we're going to go over to our SSL certificates and we're going to add a SSL certificate. For this, first we're going to do the root domain, which is hopkey.net. And then we're going to do a wildcard, so an asterisk dot hopkey.net or whatever your domain is. And then from there, we can use a DNS challenge. For the provider, I'm going to select Cloudflare right here where the API token is, just paste in ours and then agree and then click on save. Now this may take it a minute, so we're going to let it work, do what it needs to do. And there we go. It's added. It's currently inactive because nothing's using it. But if I head back over here to hosts, proxy host, and we're going to go ahead and give this a quick edit. And over here under SSL for the certificate, we're going to select the one that we just generated, force it, HTTP2 support, click save. And now if I head over here where it says not secure, click refresh. And there we go. Look at that. Connection secure. So I'll actually go ahead and log in through this instead. And there we go. We're all set up. But now I'm going to add two more real quick. One for the all-in-one kind of container management and the other one for our actual Nextcloud instance. So first, this one is going to be our Nextcloud all-in-one.hopkey.net, and it's on the same machine, so it's going to be the same IP address, and this is on the port 8080. So enable this, SSL, add the one, force HTTP2, save. And now if we go to this, we need to set the scheme to HTTPS. So now click save. And now if we go to it, we could see we could go ahead and log in, which if I go ahead and drop in that passphrase, log in, look at that, we're logged in, all secure, good to go. Now, before we do this right here, we need to set up the actual Nextcloud domain with that Apache port that we passed through in the environmental variables. So head back over here, add a new proxy host. This is simply just going to be NC, you can call it whatever you want, .hopkey.net. Hit enter. Again, it's going to be our local IP address, and this one is at the port 11000 as defined in the environmental variable. WebSocket support, block common, under SSL. Again, select that, boom, boom. But here we're going to want to paste in something under advanced. So from there, I am going to go over to the documentation that I have under cloud. I have it right here. This is directly from the official Nextcloud documentation. I'm not going to dive into exactly what each thing means, but I will leave a link so you can discover that for yourself. Let's click on save. So there we go. It's all set up, has everything should work properly, and we can test that by going over to our all-in-one instance and just typing in nc.hopkey.net. And if I click submit, it should work, which it did. Beautiful. So from here, I'm going to install Nextcloud Hub 10 and then click, actually under optional containers, let's skim through here, whiteboard, there's a recording server, full text search, I'll enable that. Click save changes. You have antivirus, which I don't really need right now, but all that looks good. So let's install the latest and greatest Nextcloud Hub 10 and click on download and start containers. Now, real quick, you could see if I do docker ps, we only got a couple things running, the two proxy manager and the all-in-one. What this is going to do is start downloading and starting up additional containers. And do note, this may take a little bit of time. There we go. There's some stuff cooking. Oh, this just changed. There we go. So you can see what's running, what's not. If I go to like Apache, if I click on starting, we can see the logs. It's simply just waiting for Nextcloud to start, and that's what everything else is going to say. So we can go to Nextcloud. It is going to take a little bit of time to start up. So you see it's doing backup. So we're just going to go ahead, get out of there, and give that a minute to finish doing what it needs to be doing. Periodically clicking on reload. Waiting to, what are you waiting for 10 seconds for? Hey, look at that. Nice. Oh, Nextcloud started. I'm going to ignore these for now. Just let them do what they need to do. I'm not going to set them up now anyways. But up here, we have our initial Nextcloud password with the username admin. So if I give this string a copy and we go to open your Nextcloud, you can see nchopkey.net. Ooh, beautiful encryption. So admin, drop in our password, and then click on login. Oh no! Give that a refresh, drop that in, log in. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You go through this, gives you some helpful information. You have apps and links to documentations and things and whatnot. So let's close this out. And here we are. We're in Nextcloud. You're set up. You're good to go. But of course, there's some additional steps and things that we're going to want to do. So if I go over here to the accounts, we have our admin account. So I'm going to click on edit and my display name. Let's go with something looks a little better. Click the little arrow and then we set a new password, something that I'll actually remember, but it's still strong and secure. So click on that. Password was changed successfully. Might as well throw in my email, save that. And just to ensure, let's go ahead and log out. And now I can log in with my email, or at least I should be able to, at the better password, log in. There we go. We're in. So now what you could do, what I recommend you do, is go to the administrative settings. Here it's going to scan for issues. There's probably not going to be a lot, hopefully. One error in logs. Nothing too critical, nothing too important, which is good. You have a bunch of personal settings here that I recommend you go ahead and dive through. We have theming, groupware, administration privileges, full text search is right here, office, whiteboard, and it all should be pretty set up automatically ready to go. So if I go over here to files, for example, and let's go to documents and just open up something. So welcome to Nextcloud Hub docx. So this is a Microsoft format. If we just click on that, look at that. We're in a nice little collaborative document editing application. Bunch of settings, a bunch of things you could do. It's truly, really feature rich. So let's close that out. And I want to show you guys the apps real quick. So if we go over here to apps, I mentioned earlier that it's modular. So for example, if I go to your apps, any little element you can disable. So you can even disable the deleted files. You could get rid of federation, which I don't really cover. Super cool. If you made this public, if you exposed and opened ports and all that fun stuff, you could have various Nextcloud instances communicate with each other, which is super fun. Very similar to something like Mastodon. There's like different, like Fostodon, there's different instances of that all can communicate to each other. Same kind of technology there. Download limits, first run wizard. You go ahead and disable any of these if you'd like to. Or if I go to featured apps, for example, we can see we already have a lot of the feature apps enabled, but you could also enable like the announcement center, collectives, external sites, external storage support, which let's go ahead and enable that. File access control, forms, so you can completely replace like Google Forms. We have our mail client, maps, music, news, which I'll show you real quick. So if I download and enable news, in a minute, it's going to pop up here, right there. So if I click on news, this is a full dedicated RSS suite. So if I go to a relatively decent source, right here we have RSS. I'm going to copy that link and then go back over to news, click subscribe, just pop in the web address. You can set folders, categorize things, but I'm just going to leave it with no folder. If I hit subscribe here, you can see I now have 9 to 5 Linux with their latest posts. So that's just one example of a use case and a separate application that you add after the fact. Now I mentioned that we have, you saw that I added the external storage. So if I go over to the administrative settings, I go down to external storage. Here we can add storage. So if I click add storage, you have a few different options. You can connect this to other Nextcloud instances. We have SMB, FTP, WebDAV, a lot of different things that we could set up through here, which is nice. So let's actually attempt to test this. So I'm going to go SMB and my host is going to be 10.0.100. The share is data, and then put in my credentials. And then we're going to link this to just all people, authenticate that. And if I click this check, authenticate again, that should be showing up. We got a green check there. So if I go over to files, scroll down here, you can see we have an SMB share. So if I open that up, you can see that's nice. This works a lot more seamlessly than it used to a couple years ago when I first tried. But now I have access to my entire file shares directly through here. So like, let's go movies. This might take a minute to load. Open up a movie folder, click this. Isn't that just too cool? Close that out before Disney cooks me. And if you do this, you could always like click this, and then let's say we want to move or copy it. I could go home and then like drop this into just like this root directory here, click on copy, and then it's going to move that from my local share over to this machine in its local root file system. So you can see it executed. If I go over to files, where you look at that, a Goofy movie. Now, there's just so much more. I'm not going to get to dive into everything, but to close off here, I just want to show you like under games, there's actual like games that you can install, Solitaire, Word Find. If I go to like customization, you could change like the app order. They have Breeze Dark here, custom CSS, custom menus, domain theming. Under social and communication, for example, you can enable a few different features or a few different services, such as Rocket Chat. You can enable Roundcube Mail if that's something you prefer to use. There's just so much you could do with this. It's ridiculous. And of course, they have their desktop application. So just like with like Google Drive, for example, You can set it up so there's a folder on your machine that automatically syncs with this. It's pretty cool stuff. And if you liked this video and you want to see more Nextcloud stuff, please let me know. I could go into more details with a lot of different things with this, such as like setting up the AI stuff right here, which can really do a lot as well. Adding those external mount directories, if that's something you're interested in. There's just so much you could do. So with all that, again, the documentation that I wrote as well as their official documentation will be linked down below. And with all that, I do hope you have an absolutely beautiful day, and goodbye.